Hey kids, so we're back for our third episode now of Painting with Adam. I do have a dad joke for you. So, uh, what was that dad joke?
Uh, it was,
Oh, I know.
yeah.
Why did the golfer need a new pair of socks? Because he got a hole in one. Ah, so yeah,
That's
that
good.
is pretty funny. That was actually compliments of
My wife,
Your
Amber,
wife,
yeah.
yeah, Amber. We got to give her credit for that. Anyway, so today we're going to actually get into actually starting to paint. A little scary because I'm going to show how.
Scary for both of us. Yeah.
So we'll see
It's
see
gonna be
what
fun.
ends up happening. So Adam, go ahead and tell us what we're going to do here.
Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly talk about the colors that I'm having us paint with today. So I think the easiest way, if you're just beginning, is to start with white. This is titanium zinc white. You could just get titanium white if you wanted to. This is a cadmium yellow, a cadmium red, and a ultramarine blue. And then down here at the bottom is Van Dyke brown. And this is just if we have some spots that are a little darker. And so these are our primary colors. All other colors can come from these. The reason I laid them out like this, if you're wondering, is because I want to make it easy to think of things in terms of light to dark, in terms of our primary colors.
Okay.
I want to leave some space to mix colors if we need to mix colors. And then I want to also think in terms of light to dark this way as well, so that you could have like a light yellow here if you mix some white with yellow, but you could also have a more of a brownish yellow if you needed one down here. So we'll kind of cover that as we get into it. I also did get myself a stiff drink of oil here. So it can be difficult for starters to just start putting paint on a canvas, even if it's primed, right? You want it primed anyways. Oil can help with that. You can even put oil straight onto the canvas to sort of make it easier to paint onto, just to kind of get that canvas nice and ready to accept paint. Oh, I'm so happy the sun
We just
came
got
out.
some sun.
Yeah,
It's kind of
warmed up.
It's been hit or miss today.
So this, and this is just a glass jar. You can use, just put your oil straight in the glass jar. This is linseed oil.
Okay.
You can also, if you wanted to, if you don't want it too thick, you can add a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, a solvent to this, and it'll kind of thin out the oil a little bit.
Me and your dad went out fishing last Saturday morning, and it was just so beautiful. I was like, oh, this would be a nice painting, but I wasn't smart enough to actually take a picture of it. So, so I've got a still of that I took, a screen capture, and Rick and I are in it. I kind of don't necessarily want to, especially now, I don't want to learn how to paint humans because that won't go very well.
Sure.
I just kind of want but I just liked the colors, and I thought it was just peaceful and calm. So we're gonna have to work around us being in the picture.
Yeah, so that's going to be part of the experience too. I think sometimes you are painting a scene and something's in it and you're like, I don't want that in it, and so you have to use a little bit of imagination to take it out. And so we're going to try to challenge ourselves in that way, and I think we can do it, and we'll kind of I'll hopefully be able to walk us through that.
I'm relying on you.
Yeah.
So
we're just going to dive in, and when it comes to painting, especially painting with oils, really important just to get your basic groundwork laid in, right? It's like building a house or something.
Okay.
So what that usually consists of is figuring out where your biggest shapes are going to be. When I look at our picture that we're painting from, we see the sky, we see the lake, we see the dock, a little bit of the dock, and we see this big group of trees sort of like flowing through the middle of the composition. First thing we want to do is figure out where our horizon line is. And it seems like it's through the middle of the trees. So I'm just going to lead off here.
okay.
I'm going to take a little bit of blue.
Okay. And what brush are you using now?
Really, at this point, you can use any brush you want.
Okay.
I would say actually start with the round. Use the round, because what we're really doing is just drawing in the basic shapes. Sorry, the round is this one.
See? Yep. Okay.
So what I'm doing when I'm getting this paint on my brush is I'm not worried about loading it up with a bunch of paint. I'm more so wanting to get kind of a thinned out amount of paint, where it's a lot of just pigment. So I'm just going to kind of draw in my basic horizon line.
Okay.
And at this point, it's just really light. You might not even be able to see it on the camera. I'm just kind of getting a line here. We're not worried about perfection. We're just getting a line in there, just so we know where our trees are going to be.
How do you hold the brush? Like a pencil?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Some people do when they're starting, they'll hold a brush like a pencil. I'd say you got to be flexible with it. Oil paint brushes are longer. The reason why is because oftentimes, traditionally, oil painters will stand back from what they're they're looking at and what their canvas is to try to get their proportions correct. And they will sort of look, measure, and boom, boom, boom.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, why are these so long?
Yeah.
But
That is why. And also you get this nice sort of range of motion with it. So we've got our basic horizon line in. The horizon line is just where sort of the earth meets the sky. Right?
Okay.
So, but we see that there are trees. So we might start to throw in some tree tops. And this is just getting that basic shape of that. So
and you're still using the blue, though.
I'm still using the blue because I'm not worried too much about. I'm not putting a ton of paint down, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't even loaded up any more paint.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
No, but you can if you want to.
Okay, I was felt like I was kind of getting light.
So if you see here, I'm just getting this basic sort of like, if you think of this as the earth, these are the trees, and for me the trees are sort of larger on the left side.
Yeah.
And then as they recede into the distance, they are smaller. And so I've kind of got this basic shape.
And you don't, Adam, do you ever sketch it first?
You can use a pencil, you can use charcoal.
Some people do that.
Some people do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And, but I usually just sketch with paint.
Yeah, okay.
But now I'm going to sort of get the reflection, because we got this big reflection in the water. Reflection mirrors things, right?
Right.
So we don't even really have to look at our reference too closely to know that these trees are going to be pretty similar on the water surface as they are in the actuality of the sky, right?
Okay.
We're not worried about details at this point. We're just worried about basic shapes. Okay. How are we looking? That looks really good.
Yeah.
That looks really good. It's beautiful.
Okay.
So we're going to start to make this look even better. This is where we're going to use a little bit more paint. You're going to take some blue, and you take some white, and we're going to start to mix up a sort of a sky color. You know what I'm going to suggest for you is using a larger brush. Since we're going to color in a lot more of this sky.
Okay. So which brush would you recommend?
I would recommend your flat, which is your large, long one.
This guy?
There, yeah, exactly. And so now you're going to be able to pick up a lot more paint.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, look at that.
You're doing great. Look at that. It's as easy as that. And I'm actually going to use a little bit of oil. And you can use a little oil as well if you want. And I'll show you. I just dip a little bit. My brush in there just a little bit. Yep, just like that. And then I'll bring it back to the palette, mix up some paint, and now we're going to start to throw that down in the sky.
Fun.
And I like to work sort of left to right, but you can do however you want. You can go right to left. Now, the reason Bob Ross uses those big brushes is he makes it a lot faster for himself to do this, right? He gets a lot more paint down. So you could, if you wanted to, you could grab that Bob Ross brush that you haven't used in 20 years. So we're just going to get some more paint. Working quickly, that's looking really good.
It's a little intimidating.
You know what, though? I would guess that Bob Ross's real name is Robert Ross.
Oh.
And I think you're living up to it.
And your middle name's Robert.
It is Robert.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. You've got a good, nice, even blue happening here.
Okay, across the top.
Across the top.
And now you're going to make it a little lighter.
A little lighter. And start to bring the sort of lighter parts of that, sort of the middle of the sky there, into my painting.
My arm's actually getting tired.
Yeah, it can happen.
I'm kind of surprised by that.
Oh yeah, especially if you're working quickly.
And are we trying to get lighter all the way down?
All the way down to the tops of these trees.
Okay.
Yeah. Because what's going to happen is then the trees are going to come in and bring their own colors and their own shadows.
Okay.
And then if we look at the surface of the water, what's going to happen is it's sort of the inverse of what we're doing. Once we get beyond the reflections of the trees, is it's going to get from light, almost white, and get darker. And it's actually going to be a darker shade than the sky even.
Okay. Okay, so now we're doing kind of the reverse on the bottom.
Right. Yep. Okay. Yep. How's your arm doing?
My shoulder is sore.
Yeah.
Surprisingly,
Yeah.
man.
Well, it will get easier. This is we're covering a lot of ground.
Okay.
That water gets pretty dark, so I'm going to try to actually take a little bit of Van Dyke brown. So some parts of painting is experimenting.
Yeah.
And I'm going to introduce a little bit of Van Dyke brown to my blue. And I'm going to try to introduce that into that bottom part of the painting because it is a bit darker down there. If I'm trying to change this tone a little bit, change this value,
Yeah.
or change the hue, I'm painting into this blue and it's making it harder. So I can actually take a little bit of my paper towel and clean that off. and that removes some of the paint, so it makes it a little easier to then get the color or the tone that I want.
Okay. Plus it kind of blends it, huh?
Yeah, you can totally use a paper towel to blend your paint.
Now I would never have thought to add brown in order to make that, but that looks like a nice dark color there.
Yeah, and you can absolutely adjust that if you're like, oh, it's getting too warm, because brown tends to be it can be warm.
Yeah.
You can just bring more blue in there.
Well, one thing I'll say too, with your dad, with cabinet making, that's one of the things I learned from him was, you're really not going to get yourself into such a spot unless you're completely careless. But there's so many workarounds. You can go, well, let's just pivot and do it this way then.
Right.
We'll just do this, and that kind of takes the fear out of it, because you go, oh, okay, well, we can solve this. And kind of the same thing with this. You put this down and they're like, I don't really like that color. You can kind of paint over the top of it. And now that crow's laughing at me for making a comment. So.
Well, I think he agreed with it. Yeah, you can totally make the adjustments as you work.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of the fear out of it. Fear of failure, the fear of messing it up. How you looking there? How you feeling about it?
I'm not sure.
I think that works okay. What I would maybe do is take a little more blue.
Okay.
Because you've got this
pretty dark,
kind of muddy looking.
Yeah.
Right? There you go. That's perfect. And then put that right through here. It can act as kind of a transitional tone or color.
Yeah.
And then that can help make that feel less, make the whole area feel less brown.
Yeah, I can already see it doing that. Okay.
Yeah. We could probably sit here all day and work on this water, but I think what we want to do at this point, we've laid in our basic blues, right?
Yeah.
Right now, they're just relative to themselves. And what I mean by that is we have no other things to compare them to.
Yeah.
And so the more paint you can get down and the more variety of objects or part of your subject you can get down, the more you can start to relate things to each other.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to move on
Okay.
from the water.
Okay.
And we're going to start looking at...
Because we can always come back.
Exactly, yeah. We're going to work dark to light. But basically what's happening is the trees that are closer to us,
Yeah.
they're a little bit more vibrant.
Yeah.
And it's not just because the sun is hitting them a little bit more, although that's part of it. But it's also just because they're closer to us. The further things recede into the distance, the more cool they become, the less vibrant they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to start actually with some darks. Some dark kind of, I would say blue-greens in here.
Okay.
And we can use a little bit of the Van Dyke brown if we need to.
Okay.
It's a little tough to read the colors off of this, so we're just going to kind of make it up a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm going to take a little Van Dyke brown, mix it in to this blue, and we're just going to try to introduce that in kind of a basic shape over here on this side. And we're not worried about the treetops. We're just getting sort of a darker color. And don't be afraid to be a little sketchy here. It can kind of be fun to be a little sketchy and just kind of bring some of this color through here. And then I'm going to say switch to your filbert, which is the rounded flat one. And you're going to take your filbert and you're going to, this is the filbert. Yeah.
Filbert.
You've got it. I've got it.
Okay.
And you're just going to take essentially the same colors you're working with, but what I would do is introduce a little yellow into that.
Into here?
Yeah, because we're dealing with trees now, and trees are green.
Mix it in here.
Mix it into that, yeah.
Too much?
No, not too much. Okay, you're gonna take it vertically. Hold it vertically, and now we're gonna start to place in some little sort of trees, and we're not just because we can't really see our reference that easily. We're kind of
right. I'm not expecting it to look exactly like that. Just,
I am.
Yeah, you probably are. I'm definitely not. So I'm trying to keep this straight up and down. What if I turned it that way?
That's fine too. The only reason I say to hold it vertically is because those treetops are vertical, right? So you can. So it gives you a better chance. If you're holding it horizontally, then those trees get a little fatter.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried too much about the detail. I'm just trying to get some darks in there that I can then lay my lights over the top of.
Yeah.
If I was working with my own sort of color choices or color palette,
Yeah.
I'd probably use some burnt sienna in some of these because it's a little bit more of an earthy red.
Okay.
And there is some earthy red in here. But based on what we have, I'm actually going to just kind of make an earthy red of cadmium and the yellow.
So you just cleaned yours off with your paper towel?
Yep, cleaned my brush, paper towel.
And what did you do over here?
I'm just kind of getting some shadowy shapes in here.
Okay. And then you'll fill in with the
and then
lighter
I'll fill
stuff,
in over
like
the top
you
with the
said.
lighter stuff, and then I can also work in darker things over time with it as well.
Okay.
I'm
gonna go rogue here and just start filling in some stuff.
Go rogue.
Just to see what I can do here.
I think that's actually part of the, not just the fun, but the challenge of oil painting is knowing when to sort of veer.
Yeah.
And also knowing when something is like not quite right, try and figure that out. It's kind of puzzling. But if you think in terms of just general shapes of color, that makes it a lot easier. You know, if you just think like, oh, this is a big orange shape. Well, I don't know if people are actually following along with this. Hopefully somebody is. But just you know, trust your gut and try some things. And if it doesn't turn out exactly like you hope, that's okay. There's always
it's kind of fun. I like the pivoting idea, and like Bob Ross always does, you know, with the making you feel like it's not a mistake. You can just kind of run with it.
Right.
And I remember the first time that I started working with with art on Corel Draw.
Yeah.
And the first time you did it, and then I saw the undo command. You know, I play around with it, do it. It didn't look good. Undo, and then you just and so it's kind of the same with this. Is you're able to kind of paint over what you did as you're going along. I don't like that. I'll paint over the top of it. Okay, I'm kind of hung up in this.
Yeah.
You've made a nice color there, Adam.
Thank
so that's
you.
red. And,
that is red and yellow.
Okay.
It creates that orange, right?
Okay.
And there's variations of red, yellow, green, orange in these trees, and that's kind of where it becomes kind of fun. Wind's picking up.
It is. And now I've got these things landing in my paint.
Yeah, I had that too. Little seeds or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of trying to cover ground still. You
Okay.
know. This is still kind of base layer when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of blank canvas. And it is coming together. That's one of the other things that I've learned doing art is just that sometimes you feel like giving up. And if you just give it a little more time, you know, it can actually really come together.
Yeah.
Yeah, yours is looking pretty good. Do you have any questions?
I just see, I kind of like, I mean, mine's kind of bland, and I do see kind of some different subtle colors that you got going on. Are you just kind of throwing those up? Like, because you got a little bit more yellow, a little more brown, a little red.
I like to mix a color, start to put it in, mix a similar color, put that in.
Okay.
And I'm not tied to like, okay, I have this orange and I have this yellow.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, maybe this would be more interesting if I threw a little bit red in it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a little bit more free.
Okay.
And because life is like that.
Yeah.
You know, things are more organic.
Yep.
I am using different angles of brush stroke. So
okay.
I
That's
kind of,
what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm going up and
Yeah,
down.
you're going
and
very
you're
vertical.
going- yeah. Okay.
So if you think about it, a tree, while being vertical in general silhouette,
Yeah.
those branches really catch the sun, and that's really what is making that tree feel more like a tree, is that you're seeing those sort of horizontal shapes that come out of those trees.
Right.
Now another little bit of hot knowledge is that green and red are complementary colors. It means that they vibrate basically when they're against each other, and they compete. And so if you've ever looked at a color wheel where you see yellow on the top and then you have violet at the bottom and you have all the colors sort of down one side and the other, if you draw lines directly across from each other on the color wheel, you will have complementary colors. So orange is complementary to blue. All that is to say that I'm working a little bit more red in here because it pops off of that green. I think I'm actually at a point where I'm going to bring a little bit more, I might bring that dock in here I forgot that there's a bit of a dock.
Okay.
And I might actually just go straight Van Dyke brown for the initial
And you're not
shape.
going to use one of them things. What's that thing called?
Palette knife?
Palette knife. There you
No.
go. No. You're just going to use that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of get the general shape in here. So sometimes having one color mixed with another color can get you even darker colors than just the two of them by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so blue and brown work really well to get it nice and almost like a black. And I'm just going to kind of introduce a little bit of contrast here. In life, as in art, the closer something is to you, the more, the larger its value range is. So what that means is the darker the darks are, and the lighter the lights are. So if you think of a mountain in the distance, there's not a huge amount of difference between the values. It's often very gray or blue or whatever. The actual lights and darks are all very similar, but the closer something is to you, the more variation you have, the darker the darks are. You shouldn't have a really dark spot in the background if you don't have a really dark spot in the foreground. You have a darker spot.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The sort of light reflection that kind of runs along the water, kind of dividing the land from the water a little bit here.
Uh-huh.
So it's going to take a little bravery. This is going to be one of your like Bob Ross. He painted a branch in front of his entire everything he's just done.
Honestly, I just started adding a little bit of red to this, and it looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I was speaking of I was a little nervous to do it, but it actually kind of makes things pop, like you said. So.
How are you feeling about your first time trying this oil painting thing?
I think it's cool. I think it's taking longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Because Bob Ross makes
it goes so fast. Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, it's kind of fun. You know, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's, like you said, I think with me, I'm kind of worried about the details. I think you're not so much, and I think I'm overly concerned about the details.
I had to work through that a lot. But the more art you look at, the more informed you are of like what matters and what doesn't matter.
Yeah.
John Singer Sargent, if you look at his art, it's really masterful, but you also get, you get close to it and you start to see, okay, like I see his brush strokes. It's not a photo,
Yeah.
I've studied a little bit of psychology of creativity and stuff, and there is a thing called a flow state that you start to get into,
Mm-hmm.
which is good for your brain, where you start to just sort of do things without thinking too much about it.
Right.
And that's kind of where you want to be.
What's that like?
That's a great question. It's wonderful. I've heard people talk about playing guitar like that, and it's like, and I can't. Occasionally I can get to that, but usually it's like, okay, you got to be just well versed with it.
Yeah, right. You get so familiar with it that you're not thinking; you're just playing.
And if I wanted to, I could bring it a little bit more dark in here and really build up those shadows a little bit more. Let's see. Which I think I'm going to do. I think also as you paint, you start to kind of get a feel for how much paint should be on your brush.
And a bug flying on your canvas.
Oh,
what do you do about that?
Oh, you just light a bunch of citronella.
Maybe it's like a fish jumping. Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So if we weren't doing this as a video, I could just kind of come out here for a few hours and just kind of play around, and you're not so worried about your little mistakes as you're going along, because it's not the final product, and you can just kind of keep adding to it. So. Okay, so Adam, I'm looking for some pointers here because I didn't know what I was doing, and you did kind of help me a little bit, but so what would you suggest that I do a little bit different?
I think he's doing really well, first of all, with creating some nice depth with this sort of less vibrant colors over here, and it really reflects the the reference pretty well. We actually backed up from them and looked at them, and we're pretty happy with how things are turning out.
Yeah.
But I did notice in here, just as some constructive feedback, the trees in here feel very similar to the trees in here in terms of sort of their size, which doesn't make that much sense in reality, as these trees are closer to us. If you chose some areas to sort of actually insert the tree, sort of like define the tree shapes, he might be able to get a little bit more depth to this. From there, start to think about, okay, what are the forms of the trees in this area? I have these sort of a little bit more defined shapes of trees as they sort of recede closer and closer into these less defined tree shapes in the distance. I think that could benefit his painting.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, because it does kind of look like a blob where they're just kind of blurry, because that is definitely closer, and it kind of goes back, in the distance. So
so you work general to specific.
Okay.
And so you've got your general shapes in, you've got your general major landmarks of your painting, of your composition, and now at this point, this is when you start to look at, where do I introduce shadows, where do I introduce highlights, how do I define these forms a little bit more? And that's kind of what we're going to get into.
Okay, so here we go, we're back at it. I see that some bugs flew onto my painting, so I have to deal with them.
Makes it more lifelike.
There you go.
Makes it immersive for the viewer. I'm going to be bringing in more highlights, and I'm going to be darkening some of the shadow areas to bring a little more contrast to it. So there might be stretches of silence.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of at a point where I'm starting to focus a little bit more on the sort of nuanced shapes here.
Yep, I like it. I was talking to your dad too, because we were out fishing, and part of it, the enjoyment of fishing, is just hanging out together too. It isn't necessarily, spending time talking the whole time. If you're enjoying the company of the person, you can even just kind of hang out together.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my favorite parts of a classroom setting is when everybody's painting, and it's just kind of this quiet, or you have some light music playing, and it's just people are focused and doing the things that they are. They're just into what they're working on. A good way to sort of read values, and again, values are lights and darks, is to sort of squint your eyes at something, and you can kind of then start to compare how dark something is against something that's light. Are there variations in the darkness and the lightness of what you're observing?
It's kind of nice to actually see the painting, or to see the photo.
Yeah,
I was
for
flying blind before.
For sure. Oh man,
so it's kind of fun to actually see and just play around with it.
Yeah. Something I'm going to be trying to do here is, with trees in particular, I really like when you can get to a point where you can start to paint the sky through the trees a little bit, if that makes sense. You're kind of finding the little holes between branches and stuff, and you can kind of put little dots of light in there where the sky peeks through. Hey, you're kind of on autopilot in a way.
Well, I'm just going to play around with it, I think, and that's part of it. I'm trying to learn, but if I'm overthinking it, then it's kind of taken away from it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The way that I found works best in my classroom is if I just talk briefly, and then just let them work.
Yeah.
And they're going to run into problems, but that's how they're going to solve problems. I can't be there solving all their problems, so they have to process some of that themselves.
Right. Mixing colors is interesting too.
Yeah.
There's definitely a learning curve in how to do that. So.
For sure. Yeah. Do you have any questions about them? You feel like there's certain colors you're trying to get, you're struggling with? Or?
No, I think it just definitely comes through trial and error, though.
Yeah. And I'm not the most organized color mixer.
I think you've got a good eye, though. I think you've got a good eye for what color you're trying to create. I have noticed that.
Thank you.
I'm trying to get kind of a darker green. So how do you get a darker green? I end up with kind of an olive army green. That's what I'm into. Should I just add more?
I think what you're going to want to do, if you're looking for a more pure green.
I'm trying to get something kind of along there.
So I would start with your blue and your yellow.
Okay.
Mix those.
Okay.
And then slowly introduce brown if you need it.
Okay. So maybe I'll just start something over here. That's exactly what I was trying to get.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's a nice green.
One of the challenges of painting, and really art in general, is differentiating between what's called local color and what color you're actually seeing.
Yeah.
You know, something like a fire hydrant is red, you know. That's its local color. You look at it and you're like, oh, that's red.
Yeah.
But in the right lighting or in different lighting, you know, it might not be that pure red, you know, because it might have the shadows on it, or it might have, maybe it's in a certain type of twilight or something. So you're really kind of also having to pay attention to that too.
Fun stuff, Adam.
Yeah.
This
I'm
is
glad
pretty.
you enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's relaxing.
Yeah.
And it's.
I've heard that. I've heard that, you know, it's just a nice. You can kind of get into a zone where you're just kind of enjoying being outside and painting.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to, when you step back from it, it's like, man, that looks great.
Yeah.
But the closer you get, oh, maybe not so much. It is there's a lot of quietness on this, huh?
Uh-huh. Maybe play some soft music over this.
Yeah, there you go.
People can just relax. And there are times where, you know, when the paint is so wet, maybe it is better to take a couple days off from it. And so kind of let it sort of dry, set up, and then come back. And I think if you're finding it difficult to work with the paint because there's too much paint on the canvas,
Yeah.
because anything you do might just smear it around.
Yeah.
It might be better just to take a break.
Well, cool. That was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
Adam. You know, enjoying the experience and hanging out with you, right? And that's part of the Bob Ross appeal is you're just kind of, you know, hanging out. Okay, you have any last thoughts? Or
I was just going to say, I think the most enjoyable part of this for me, there was a lot of enjoyable aspects of it, but the most enjoyable part was towards the middle end where we were just like quiet and just painting and in our own zone.
You didn't have me talking anymore.
I was like, please stop.
Nice.
I was like, no more questions. But you were experimenting and I was trying to fix things and change things, and it was just at some point when you're painting you will hit, if you're if you're able to silence the inner critic a little bit and just be able to enjoy it, you'll hit a point at which you're just kind of painting, and it's nice. Everything else kind of fades away a little bit, and I think we hit that a little bit. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Cool. It's a lot of fun.
Well, cool. Thank you for joining us for this experience, and I'll be definitely painting more now that I kind of know what to do, and I can refer back to this video series so I can try to remember all that Adam pumped my brain full of with all this information. So, but it's been a lot of fun. So, Adam, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it. So, and thank you for watching, and God bless you.